When my husband told me, "I'm moving back in with my ex-wife to take care of her, you'll understand one day," I smiled and said, "Of course." I even packed his bags and drove him there. What I quietly slipped into her mailbox had him back home empty-handed in less than 48 hours. "I'm moving back in with Cassidy to take care of her during her recovery. You'll understand one day." Gabriel delivered these words while I was mid-sip of my Tuesday evening chamomile tea, causing me to set the cup down with deliberate control rather than throw it at his head. 5 years of marriage, and he chose to detonate our life together with the casual tone someone might use to announce they were switching grocery stores. I studied his face, the way he kept adjusting his reading glasses, the nervous twist of his wedding ring, the careful distance he maintained from me across our kitchen island. "Of course," I heard myself say, my voice carrying a sweetness that made him step back. "When do you need to leave?" His relief was instant and insulting. He'd expected tears, accusations, maybe even the ceramic mug flying past his ear. Instead, my calm acceptance threw him completely off balance. "Tomorrow afternoon," he managed, his fingers still worrying at that wedding ring. "Her surgery is Thursday morning at 7. Before we dive deeper, if you believe that trust and honesty are the foundation of any marriage, please consider subscribing. It's free and helps us share these important stories. Now let's see how Isabella handles this shocking betrayal." I nodded, taking another sip of tea. The kitchen felt smaller suddenly, the walls pressing in despite the open floor plan we'd fallen in love with when we bought the house 3 years ago. Back then, Gabriel had wrapped his arms around me in this very spot, whispering about the children we'd raise here, the dinner parties we'd host, the life we'd build together. Now he stood on the opposite side of the granite island like it was a fortress wall. "How long has Cassidy been planning this surgery?" I asked, my tone conversational. "About 2 months. It's complicated. Something to do with nerve damage from her car accident last year." He was warming to his topic now, probably grateful I was engaging rather than exploding. "She's been trying to manage with physical therapy, but the doctors finally said surgery was the only option." 2 months. While I'd been planning our anniversary trip to Napa Valley, he'd been planning his exodus. The reservation confirmations were still in my email, the wine tour already paid for, scheduled for 3 weeks from now. I wondered if he'd forgotten or simply hadn't cared enough to remember. "And she has no one else?" I asked, genuinely curious about this part of his narrative. Cassidy Morrison wasn't exactly a hermit. Her Facebook profile, which I definitely hadn't been checking, showed regular girls' nights, family barbecues, and a particularly close relationship with her sister despite what Gabriel was about to claim. Her parents moved to Florida last year, and you know she and her sister don't speak anymore. There was the lie sliding out smooth as butter. Just last week, Cassidy had posted photos from her sister's birthday dinner. "I'm the only one she feels comfortable asking for help with intimate care needs." Intimate care needs. The phrase hung in the air between us like a confession. I could see him realize what he'd said, watch the flush creep up his neck as he scrambled to clarify. "Medical care. I mean medical care. Helping her shower, changing bandages, that sort of thing." "How fortunate that you're available to help," I said, getting up to rinse my mug in the sink. Through the window, I could see our neighbor Margaret walking her ancient poodle, keeping to her strict 7:30 schedule. The normalcy of it felt surreal. "Will you be staying in the guest room?" Gabriel's silence lasted a beat too long. "She's converted her home office into a recovery room. On the ground floor so she won't have to manage stairs." "That's thoughtful of her." I turned off the tap, dried my hands on the dish towel with deliberate care. "Planning ahead like that. 2 months, you said?" He must have heard something in my tone because his shoulders tensed. "Isabella, this isn't. I'm not leaving you. This is temporary. Just until she's back on her feet." "Of course it is." I folded the dish towel, hung it perfectly straight on the oven handle. "And how long do the doctors expect her recovery to take?" 6 weeks. Maybe 8, depending on complications. 8 weeks of my husband living with his ex-wife, providing intimate care, being her hero. I turned to face him fully, leaning back against the counter. "You've really thought this through." "I had to. I knew it would be difficult for you to understand, but Isabella, she was my wife for 8 years. We might not have worked out, but I can't just abandon her when she needs help." There was that word again, abandon. As if not moving in with your ex-wife constituted abandonment. as if staying with your current wife was somehow the lesser moral choice. You're right, I said, and his eyes widened with surprise. I do understand. You've made a commitment and you need to honor it. Gabriel's relief was almost comical. He actually smiled, that boyish grin that had charmed me at a coffee shop 6 years ago. I knew you'd come around. You're amazing, Isabella. Not many women would be so understanding. I smiled back, already mentally cataloging the contents of his office. The passwords he kept on sticky notes despite my warnings about security. The filing cabinet where he thought I didn't know he kept old photos of Cassidy. Well, we should get you packed then. You'll want to be organized when you arrive. You don't have to help, he said quickly. I know this is strange. Nonsense. What kind of wife would I be if I didn't help my husband when he needs it? I moved past him toward the hallway. I'll get your suitcase from the closet. You should probably call Cassidy and let her know when to expect you. As I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, I heard him behind me, his voice already dropping into those soft, intimate tones. Hey Cass. As I talked to her. She's being incredible about it. Incredible. That was one word for what I was being. Walking into our bedroom, I pulled his large suitcase from the closet, the one we'd bought for our honeymoon in Costa Rica. Inside, the luggage tag from that trip was still attached. Mr. and Mrs. Gabriel Harrington, it read. Forever begins today. Forever had lasted exactly 5 years, 2 months and 16 days. The suitcase lay open on our bed like a mouth waiting to swallow the last 5 years of my life. I heard the shower turn on in the master bathroom, Gabriel's off-key humming of some old song drifting through the door. He always hummed when he felt guilty, a tell he never knew he had. I folded another shirt, crisp hospital corners like my mother taught me, and placed it in the suitcase next to the others. His laptop sat open on his nightstand, the screen dark but not locked. Gabriel never remembered to lock it despite my constant reminders about digital security. The shower was still running strong. He took long showers, especially when he needed to think, which meant I had at least 10 minutes. I walked around the bed and touched the trackpad. The screen blazed to life, revealing his email inbox. There at the top, a thread with Cassidy Morrison that stretched back 2 months. 2 months of planning this moment while I slept beside him each night, oblivious. The subject line read post-surgery arrangements, innocent enough for anyone glancing over his shoulder. I clicked it open. The latest message from Cassidy, sent yesterday at 11:43 p.m. while I was asleep after yoga, made my stomach twist. Can't wait to have you here again, Gabe. Feels like we're finally getting our second chance. Once you're moved in, we can see where this really goes. Gabriel's response, sent at 11:51 p.m. from the bathroom while I slept in the next room. Isabella won't fight it if we frame it right. She's too polite to seem unsupportive of someone who's sick. Trust me on this. Too polite. After 5 years of marriage, that was how he saw me. Not kind, not understanding, not loving. Polite. Like I was a stranger who'd hold the door open rather than let it slam in someone's face. I scrolled further back. March 15th, Cassidy wrote, "The doctor says I can schedule the surgery anytime after May. Should we wait until after your anniversary?" Gabriel's reply, "No, sooner is better. Isabella always gets emotional around our anniversary. Better to do it when she's distracted with work." They'd scheduled my heartbreak around my busy season at the marketing firm, like a dental appointment squeezed between meetings. I heard the water pressure change in the shower, signaling Gabriel was almost done. I closed the email, making sure to mark it as unread, and returned to folding clothes. When Gabriel emerged, towel around his waist, hair dripping, he found me organizing his medication bottles into a travel case. "You don't have to do this," he said, but his voice carried relief rather than protest. "Scrambled eggs or omelet?" I asked, not looking up from the pills I was sorting. "For breakfast, I mean. You'll need a good meal before the drive." "Isabella." He sat on the edge of the bed, water droplets from his hair hitting the comforter. "Scrambled it is. With that hot sauce you like." I snapped the medication case closed. "I'll start cooking while you get dressed." In the kitchen, I moved with practiced efficiency. Eggs whisked with a splash of cream, just how Gabriel preferred them. Sourdough bread in the toaster, butter softening on the counter. Coffee brewing strong and black. Every motion automatic, leaving my mind free to process what I'd read. 2 months. 8 weeks of careful planning, of synchronized deception. I thought about all the times he'd worked late, the weekend conferences that now seemed suspiciously frequent, The way he'd been extra attentive lately, guilt disguised as affection. The doorbell rang as I was plating the eggs. Through the kitchen window, I saw Maria's red Honda in the driveway. My best friend since college had the timing of someone who sensed disaster like animals sense earthquakes. Just wanted to drop off that book, Maria announced when I opened the door, though we both knew she'd never mentioned any book. Her eyes took in my forced smile, the sounds of Gabriel moving around upstairs, the suitcase visible through the bedroom doorway. Isabella, what's happening? Gabriel's helping Cassidy through surgery recovery, I said, my voice bright as morning sunshine. Isn't that wonderful of him? Maria's face went through several expressions before settling on disbelief. She worked as a surgical nurse at the same hospital where Cassidy was having her procedure. The breast augmentation? The words landed in my kitchen like grenades, but I kept whisking eggs. She said it was nerve damage from a car accident. Isabella. Maria lowered her voice. I saw the surgery schedule. Cosmetic. Elective. She's been planning it for months. How thoughtful of her to schedule it so carefully, I said, adding salt to the eggs with a steady hand. Maria stared at me. We'd known each other for 12 years through bad boyfriends and worse decisions, through her divorce and my father's death. She knew my faces, all of them including this one, the calm before I burned everything down. Do you want me to stay? She asked quietly. No need. Gabriel needs a good breakfast before his mission of mercy. I poured the eggs into the heated pan, the sizzle filling the silence. After Maria left, pressing my hand tightly and whispering, "Call me," I served Gabriel his breakfast. He ate quickly, nervously, complimenting the eggs twice as if that might ease his guilt. I sipped my coffee and made appropriate sounds of agreement when he explained again how temporary this arrangement would be. I should check the joint account, he said suddenly, pulling out his phone. Make sure there's enough for groceries while I'm gone. I watched him scroll through our banking app, watched his face remain carefully neutral as he viewed the balance. He didn't mention the $30,000 that had disappeared over the past 2 years, the monthly transfers to an insurance company I'd never heard of, the large withdrawal labeled property consultation from just 6 weeks ago. He simply closed the app and continued eating. I'll handle the bills while you're gone, I offered, refilling his coffee cup. You're incredible, he said again, that word that was starting to sound more like an indictment than a compliment. I don't deserve you. Finally, something we could agree on. I smiled and began clearing the dishes, each movement deliberate and calm while inside. Pieces of my world rearranged themselves into a pattern I was only beginning to understand. The missing money, the secret planning, the surgery that wasn't what it seemed, threads of deception weaving together into something larger than just an affair. We should finish packing, I said, drying my hands on the kitchen towel. Cassidy will be waiting. Back upstairs, Gabriel had moved to his office to make phone calls, his voice a low murmur through the closed door. I stood in our bedroom surveying the chaos of packing that lay ahead. His clothes hung in the closet like witnesses to our unraveling marriage, each shirt and tie holding memories I needed to push aside. I pulled out his summer clothes first, the linen pants he'd worn on our trip to Charleston last month, the polo shirts from golf outings with clients. Each piece folded with the precision of someone who'd worked retail in college, creases sharp enough to cut. Gabriel emerged from his office an hour later to find me surrounded by perfectly organized piles. His dress shirts arranged by color gradient, casual wear sorted by function, each stack looking like a department store display. You're really going all out, he said, and I heard the discomfort creeping into his voice. If you're going to be caring for someone, you need to be organized, I replied, holding up a label maker I'd found in the closet. I'm labeling everything so you can find what you need quickly. Morning wear, evening casual, sleepwear. Each label printed with unnecessary precision, the kind of detail that suggested either obsessive care or barely contained rage. Isabella, this is... He stopped, watching me fold his boxers into perfect squares. You really don't need to do all this. I've already started on the meals too, I continued as if he hadn't spoken. I'm preparing 2 weeks' worth of frozen dinners. Cassidy shouldn't have to cook while recovering, and you were never much good in the kitchen. The insult slid in smoothly, wrapped in concern. I've got chicken soup, that pasta bake you love, and I'm working on a special healing tea blend with ginger and turmeric. Gabriel's face went through several expressions before settling on something close to fear. A tea blend. For Cassidy's recovery. Anti-inflammatory properties. I smiled brightly. I'll put it in a nice jar with instructions. She'll appreciate the gesture. He retreated to his office again and I heard him on the phone, voice lowered but urgent. No, she's being helpful. Too helpful. It's strange. Pause. I don't know what to think. While he was distracted, I slipped into his office. The filing cabinet in the corner had always been locked, Gabriel's private space for what he called important documents. What he didn't know was that I'd had a copy of the key made years ago after he'd lost his original and asked me to order a replacement. 2 keys arrived, I gave him one. The bottom drawer slid open silently. Behind tax returns from 3 years ago, behind old warranties and instruction manuals, my fingers found a folder that felt different. Newer. The papers inside were crisp, recently handled. I pulled it out carefully, listening for Gabriel's footsteps. The first document stopped my breathing for a moment. A life insurance policy on Cassidy Morrison, dated 2 years ago, valued at $500,000. Gabriel listed as sole beneficiary. The premium payments, I noted with cold clarity, matched those mysterious insurance company deductions from our joint account. He'd been paying for this with our money, planning something I couldn't quite grasp yet. But the second document made everything crystalline clear. A quitclaim deed signed 6 weeks ago, transferring partial ownership of Cassidy's townhouse to Gabriel. The same townhouse he was moving into today. The document cited consideration of future care and support as the reason for transfer. 6 weeks ago we'd been celebrating our anniversary at that overpriced French restaurant downtown, Gabriel holding my hand across the table talking about our future. My phone camera captured everything. Each page, each signature, each date. The insurance policy's payment history. The deed's notary stamp. The witness signature that looked suspiciously like Gabriel's colleague Roger's handwriting. 23 photos in total, each one evidence of a betrayal that went deeper than just an affair. I heard Gabriel's footsteps in the hall and quickly returned everything exactly as I'd found it. The folder went back behind the tax returns, the drawer locked, and I was examining his bookshelf when he opened the door. Finding something? His voice carried an edge of suspicion. That medical reference book you bought last year, I said, running my finger along the spines. Thought it might be helpful for understanding Cassidy's recovery needs. He relaxed visibly. It's in the garage, I think. But really, the doctor will provide all the information. Of course. I moved past him toward the door. I should check on the soup. Downstairs, I ladled the freshly made chicken soup into containers, each one labeled with heating instructions in my neatest handwriting. My phone buzzed. Mother calling, her timing impeccable as always. I answered with forced cheer. Hi, Mom. Isabella, something's wrong. I can feel it. 30 years of maternal instinct compressed into one phone call. Everything's fine. Actually, Gabriel's doing something really noble. I let admiration seep into my voice. His ex-wife Cassidy needs help after surgery and he's stepping up to care for her. Isn't that wonderful? The silence on the other end stretched for 3 seconds. He's what? Moving in temporarily to help with her recovery. It's what any decent person would do. I knew my mother would be on the phone with her book club within minutes, the news spreading through our social circle like wildfire. Gabriel's noble gesture would be discussed over wine and judgment before he even arrived at Cassidy's. Isabella Marie. My mother's voice dropped to her serious tone, the one she'd used when she caught me sneaking out in high school. What are you playing at? I'm supporting my husband's decision to help someone in need, I replied, adding another container of soup to the growing collection. Wouldn't you do the same for Dad? She made a sound that could have meant anything. You call me if you need me. Of course, Mom. Give Dad my love. I hung up and returned to the meal preparation. Lasagna assembled with layers as precise as my folded clothes. Vegetable curry portioned into individual servings. Everything Gabriel would need for 2 weeks of domestic comfort while playing house with another woman. The tea blend came together last. Chamomile for calm, ginger for inflammation, honey powder for sweetness, and just a touch of lavender for sleep. Nothing harmful, nothing that would hurt anyone. Just a gentle remedy packed in a glass jar with a hand-painted label. For healing and new beginnings. Gabriel found me arranging everything in a cooler with ice packs. This is too much, he said, but his protest sounded hollow. It's exactly enough, I corrected, closing the cooler with a decisive snap. There. All ready for tomorrow. Wednesday morning arrived with a mockery of sunshine streaming through our bedroom windows. Gabriel was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed in his freshly pressed khakis and the blue button-down I'd ironed the night before. The same shirt he'd worn to his first dinner with my parents 4 years ago. Now he was wearing it to move in with another woman. Coffee? I asked, already knowing the answer. Gabriel needed his morning coffee like other people needed oxygen, 2 sugars, splash of cream, served in the ukulele mug his brother had given him. In the kitchen, I moved through the ritual of coffee making with mechanical precision while Gabriel loaded his bags by the front door. The cooler of prepared meals sat ready on the counter, the glass jar of healing tea nestled on top like a crown jewel of martyrdom. I heard him grunt slightly as he lifted his suitcase, the one packed with clothes I'd folded as if preparing a soldier for war. My car's still in the shop, Gabriel announced when I handed him his coffee, though we both knew I'd seen it parked at his office yesterday when I'd driven past. Would you mind driving me? The lie sat between us, obvious and insulting, but I smiled. Of course. We should probably take the cooler too. Everything's ready. During the 20-minute drive to Cassidy's townhouse, Gabriel transformed. With each mile away from our home, his shoulders relaxed, his breathing deepened, his fingers stopped drumming nervously on his knee. By the time we reached the highway, he was actually humming again, that same guilty tune from yesterday's shower. This is really modern of us, he said as we passed the exit for downtown. Most people wouldn't understand this kind of arrangement. We're not most people, I replied, keeping my eyes on the road while memorizing every detail of his relief. The way he kept checking his phone, probably text messages from Cassidy. The slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. The wedding ring he'd moved to his right hand sometime this morning, thinking I wouldn't notice. Cassidy's townhouse development appeared like a mirage of mediocrity, endless rows of beige and gray facades with tiny patches of regulated grass. Her unit sat at the end of Rosewood Court, a name that suggested elegance the neighborhood couldn't deliver. I pulled into her driveway behind a BMW that definitely hadn't been there during her supposed financial struggles she'd posted about on Facebook last year. Before Gabriel could even unbuckle his seatbelt, the front door opened. Cassidy stood framed in the doorway like she'd been waiting at the window, watching for our arrival. She wore silk pajamas the color of champagne, her blonde hair perfectly curled, her face fully made up with the kind of careful application that takes an hour minimum. For someone recovering from surgery, she looked remarkably like someone heading to brunch at an upscale restaurant. Gabriel. Her voice carried across the small lawn with practiced weakness. I was getting worried. She moved toward us with careful steps, one hand pressed to her side in a gesture of pain that didn't quite match the smooth flow of her walk. Gabriel practically leaped from the car to meet her, his hands hovering near her elbows as if she might collapse at any moment. Careful, he murmured, and I watched Cassidy lean into him with calculated fragility. Isabella, Cassidy finally acknowledged me, her green eyes sweeping over me with the kind of assessment women give their rivals. You're such an angel for understanding. Not many wives would be so evolved. I retrieved the cooler from the back seat, my movements deliberately cheerful. We all do what we must. Gabriel tells me your recovery might be challenging. Oh, it's been awful, Cassidy sighed, though her breathing showed no signs of post-surgical difficulty. The pain is just unbearable at times. I can barely manage alone. As we moved inside, I catalogued everything. The wheelchair positioned prominently in the living room but showing no signs of use, its price tag hastily removed but leaving adhesive residue. Prescription bottles arranged on the coffee table like props, their labels facing outward for maximum visibility. Fresh flowers in every room, the kind of expensive arrangements that suggested visitors were expected. The surgery recovery setup was as staged as a furniture showroom. Let me help with the bags, I offered, following Gabriel back to the car while Cassidy posed herself decoratively on the couch. She seems to be managing well for someone post-surgical, I commented mildly, lifting his laptop bag. Gabriel's jaw tightened. Recovery affects everyone differently. Inside, Cassidy had moved to the kitchen, her hand finding Gabriel's arm with the practiced ease of long-time intimacy. I've missed having someone here, she said, her fingers trailing along his sleeve. The nights are the hardest. Well, now you have help, I said brightly, setting the cooler on her granite counter. I've prepared 2 weeks of meals. And this, I held up the glass jar, is a special healing blend tea. Ginger, turmeric, chamomile. Very soothing. Cassidy's smile tightened at the edges. How thoughtful. I should go, I announced after helping arrange Gabriel's things in what Cassidy called the guest room but had clearly been recently redecorated with new sheets and fresh paint. Let you two get settled. Gabriel walked me to the door, his relief at my departure palpable. I'll call you later, he said, the lie comfortable on his lips. Take all the time you need, I replied, loud enough for Cassidy to hear. I drove 2 blocks to a small coffee shop I'd noticed on the way in. The afternoon crowd hadn't arrived yet, giving me privacy in a corner booth with my laptop and the folder I'd hidden in my purse. Every photograph from yesterday transferred to a new email account, backed up to a cloud service, evidence preserved in triplicate. The manila envelope I'd purchased that morning came out next. Inside went printed copies of everything. The life insurance policy with payment records highlighted, the property deed with a sticky note reading interesting timing, property transfer 6 weeks before elective surgery, screenshots of their planning emails with Gabriel's cruel assessment of my politeness highlighted in yellow. But the masterpiece was Cassidy's own Instagram. 3 days before her supposed emergency surgery, she'd posted photos from a wine tasting in Napa. Her radiant smile and the glass of Cabernet in her hand didn't suggest someone preparing for urgent medical intervention. I printed those too, adding another note, remarkable recovery from that wine tasting. The final piece of my package was the handwritten note on cream-colored stationery I'd purchased specifically for this moment. My handwriting, deliberately altered to be unrecognizable, spelled out Cassidy's future with surgical precision. Cassidy, you should know Gabriel took out a $500,000 life insurance policy on you 2 years ago, paid from marital assets. Combined with the property transfer, this creates an interesting financial picture. Perhaps ask why a healthy woman needs a caretaker who profits from her death. Check with your attorney about property transfers made under medical duress. Coercion voids contracts. Best wishes for your recovery, a concerned observer. I sealed the envelope, wrote Cassidy's name across the front and left the coffee shop. The walk to her neighborhood took 15 minutes, enough time for the afternoon to fade into early evening. Dog walkers and joggers provided perfect cover as I strolled past manicured lawns and identical mailboxes. Cassidy stood at the end of her driveway, black metal with a red flag waiting to announce incoming mail. I slipped the envelope inside, feeling the satisfying weight of it settling among her regular correspondence, then continued walking as if I belonged there, just another resident enjoying the evening air. The drive home felt like floating. Every traffic light seemed to understand my mood, turning green at my approach. Back in my empty house, the silence greeted me like an old friend. No television murmuring from Gabriel's study, no sound of his typing, no clearing of his throat when he wanted attention but wouldn't ask for it directly. Just blessed quiet. I poured myself a glass of Malbec from the bottle Gabriel had been saving for a special occasion and stood in my kitchen, surveying the space he'd always criticized. Too cluttered, he'd say, too many gadgets we never used. But tonight I saw it differently. Every appliance had its place, every spice jar faced forward, the counters clear and clean. This was my space, organized exactly how I wanted it. The wine tasted better than it ever had when shared with Gabriel. I reorganized the pantry while sipping it, moving his protein bars to the highest shelf, bringing my herbal teas front and center. His breakfast cereals went to the back, my granola took prime position. Small acts of reclamation that felt like revolution. My phone sat on the counter, face up, volume high. Cassidy always checked her mail first thing in the morning. She'd posted about it once, calling it her morning ritual before coffee. 7:30 a.m. like clockwork, based on the timestamps of her complaint posts about bills and political flyers. In approximately 13 hours she would find my envelope. The thought made me smile into my wine glass. That night, I slept in the center of our king-sized bed, spreading out like a starfish, claiming every inch of space Gabriel had occupied. No snoring from his side, no restless turning, no alarm set for his unreasonably early workout routine he'd maintained for exactly 3 weeks before quitting. The sheets smelled only of my lavender fabric softener, his cologne already fading like a ghost giving up its haunt. Thursday morning arrived with birds singing outside my window. 6:30 a.m. I stretched luxuriously, taking my time with morning yoga in the living room where Gabriel always complained about my mat being in the way. Warrior pose felt particularly appropriate as I held it, breathing deeply, centering myself for whatever would come. Breakfast was simple. Greek yogurt with honey and walnuts, green tea in my favorite mug. The delicate one with painted roses Gabriel said looked like something from a grandmother's estate sale. I checked work emails, responded to a client about a marketing proposal, scheduled a meeting for next week. Normal activities that felt surreal given what was brewing 2 miles away in Cassidy's mailbox. 7:30 came and went. My phone remained silent. 7:45. 8 o'clock. Either Cassidy was sleeping in, breaking her routine, or she was processing what she'd found. I imagined her standing in her driveway, envelope in hand, reading and rereading the note. The dawning realization that Gabriel might not be the savior she'd orchestrated him to be. At 8:17 my phone buzzed. Not Gabriel but my sister Lauren, her timing uncanny as always. "You're not going to believe what I just heard," she said without preamble. Lauren lived for gossip the way other people lived for oxygen. "Good morning to you too," I replied, refilling my tea. "Cassidy Morrison has been bragging at book club for weeks about getting Gabriel back," Lauren continued, her voice pitched with the excitement of someone delivering breaking news. "Jennifer. You remember Jennifer, Cassidy's sister. She's been telling everyone how Cassidy planned the whole thing. The surgery timing, everything." I set my cup down carefully. "Jennifer's in your book club?" "Started last month. She's been dying to vent about Cassidy. Apparently, Cassidy researched when your busy season at work would be, planned the surgery for maximum impact. She even practiced her helpless act in the mirror, according to Jennifer. The confirmation of what I'd suspected should have hurt, but instead, it felt like validation. Every instinct I'd had was correct. "That's quite elaborate," I said mildly. "Isabella, she's been planning this for over a year. Jennifer said Cassidy hired a private investigator to track Gabriel's routines, learned about your marriage problems." "We didn't have marriage problems," I interrupted. Lauren paused. "You didn't?" "Not until yesterday." The silence stretched between us before Lauren spoke again, her voice softer. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to finish my tea and work on the Henderson account," I replied. "Speaking of which, I have a video call with my attorney in 20 minutes. "Your attorney?" "Isabella, you didn't waste any time." "Why would I?" "Gabriel made his choice. I'm simply responding accordingly." After Lauren hung up, I prepared for my video consultation with Catherine Brennan, the attorney Maria had recommended last year during her own divorce. Catherine's face appeared on my laptop screen at exactly 9 o'clock, her expression professional but warm. "Isabella, I've reviewed the documents you sent. This is quite a collection." I'd emailed her everything the night before. The insurance policy, the property deed, bank statements showing the missing $30,000, screenshots of the email planning between Gabriel and Cassidy. "Your husband's actions constitute marital asset fraud," Catherine continued, her fingers steepled as she spoke. "Using joint funds for the insurance policy, the property consultation, hiding assets. These give you significant leverage. The property transfer alone raises questions about undue influence and financial manipulation." "What does that mean practically?" I asked, taking notes on a legal pad. "It means Gabriel has violated his fiduciary duty to you as his spouse. The court takes a dim view of spouses who dissipate marital assets, especially when deception is involved. You're entitled to a full accounting and likely a larger share of the remaining assets as compensation. And if he tries to claim this is temporary, that he's coming back?" Catherine's smile was sharp as a blade. "Abandonment is abandonment, regardless of his stated intentions." Catherine was explaining the specifics of asset division when my phone rang at exactly 11:47 a.m. Gabriel's name on the screen made my pulse quicken, though I kept my expression neutral for the video call. "I need to take this," I told Catherine. "It's him. Document everything," she advised before I clicked over. Gabriel's voice came through high and strained, nothing like the confident man who'd left my house yesterday morning. "Isabella, I need to come home." "No. Can you come get me?" I stood up from my desk, moving to the window where morning light streamed through the blinds. "What's happened? Is Cassidy all right?" "She's lost her mind. She's locked me out. My bags are on the lawn. She's threatening to call the police." His words tumbled over each other, panic making him sound decades younger than his 35 years. She found some documents. She thinks I'm trying to. It's insane. She thinks I'm after her money. The satisfaction that bloomed in my chest was dark and complete, though my voice remained steady. The police? Gabriel, what kind of documents would make her think that? I don't know. The edge of hysteria in his voice was new. In 5 years of marriage I'd never heard him this rattled. Something about insurance and property. She's completely paranoid. The pain medication must be affecting her judgment. I grabbed my car keys, already moving toward the door. I'm on my way. Try to stay calm. Please hurry. The neighbors are staring. The drive to Cassidy's took 18 minutes, though I could have made it in 12. Each red light gave me time to compose my face into the appropriate expression of concern mixed with confusion. By the time I turned onto Rosewood Court, I'd achieved the perfect balance of supportive wife rushing to rescue her troubled husband. The scene that greeted me was better than anything I could have imagined. Gabriel sat on his suitcases at the end of Cassidy's driveway, his shoulders hunched, looking exactly like lost luggage no one wanted to claim. His perfectly pressed shirt from yesterday was wrinkled, his hair mussed as if he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. 2 neighbors stood in their driveways, pretending to check their mail while obviously gawking at the drama. Through Cassidy's front window I could see her pacing, phone pressed to her ear, gesticulating wildly with her free hand. Even from the car her agitation was visible in every movement. The silk pajamas from yesterday had been replaced with regular clothes, the invalid act apparently forgotten in her rage. I parked and approached Gabriel with measured steps, aware of our audience. "Oh, Gabriel," I said loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "What on earth happened?" He stood quickly, nearly stumbling over his own bags. "She just went crazy. One minute she was fine, the next she was screaming about fraud and throwing my things outside." His eyes darted toward the window where Cassidy had stopped pacing to glare at us. "We need to leave. Now." I picked up one of his bags, noting how he flinched when Cassidy's front door opened slightly, then slammed shut again. "Of course. Let's get your things in the car." We loaded his possessions quickly, the same bags I'd helped him pack with such precision now thrown haphazardly into my trunk. Gabriel kept looking back at the house as if expecting Cassidy to storm out at any moment. His hands shook as he closed the trunk. "She was fine last night," he said as we pulled away, Cassidy's townhouse shrinking in the rearview mirror. "We had dinner, watched a movie. Everything was normal. Then this morning she got the mail and just exploded." I merged onto the main road, keeping my voice gentle. "The mail. She found something in her mailbox. Documents about insurance policies and property transfers. She accused me of trying to steal from her, of planning to hurt her for money." His voice cracked on the last words. "Isabella, I would never. You know I would never." "Of course not," I soothed, signaling for a turn. "It sounds like the pain medication is making her paranoid. Some people have terrible reactions to those drugs. She's probably not thinking clearly." Gabriel seized on this explanation with desperate relief. "That must be it. The medications. She was taking so many pills yesterday." He rubbed his face with both hands. "But she called me a con artist. Said I was after her money. Where would she even get such an idea?" "Who knows what goes through someone's mind when they're not well," I offered, maintaining steady speed through our neighborhood. "Maybe she'll calm down once the medications wear off." "She won't take my calls." I tried explaining, but she just kept screaming about lawyers and fraud charges. He slumped in the passenger seat, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. This was supposed to be about helping her recover. How did it turn into this? I pulled into our driveway, the familiar sight of our house apparently startling Gabriel, as if he'd forgotten this was still technically his home. We sat in the car for a moment, engine ticking as it cooled. "Maybe she just needs time," I suggested. "Surgery can be traumatic. People aren't themselves afterward." Gabriel nodded eagerly, clinging to any rational explanation that didn't involve examining his own actions. "You're right. She needs time. Once she's thinking clearly, she'll realize this is all a misunderstanding." As we unloaded his bags, Mrs. Patterson appeared with her ancient cocker spaniel, Butterscotch, timing her walk perfectly to intersect with our arrival. Mrs. Patterson had lived on our street for 30 years and possessed an intelligence network that would make the CIA envious. "Isabella." "Gabriel." she called out, her voice carrying that particular tone of someone pretending surprise while delivering gossip. I heard there was quite the commotion at the Morrison place this morning. Gabriel stiffened beside me, but I touched his arm gently. Mrs. Patterson, how are you? How's Butterscotch? Oh, we're fine, dear. Though I must say the police scanner was very active this morning. Something about a domestic dispute on Rosewood Court. Her eyes glinted with barely contained excitement. The whole neighborhood heard the yelling. Something about fraud and theft. That poor woman was beside herself. Gabriel's face flushed deep red. It was a misunderstanding. Of course, Mrs. Patterson agreed, though her expression suggested she was already composing the story she'd share at tomorrow's neighborhood coffee clatch. These things happen. Though I must say accusations of fraud are quite serious. The police seemed very interested. We should get inside, I said to Mrs. Patterson, gesturing toward Gabriel's bags scattered on our driveway. It's been a long morning. She nodded knowingly, tugging Butterscotch's leash. Of course, dear. You two take care now. Her parting look at Gabriel suggested she'd already convicted him in the court of neighborhood opinion. Gabriel trudged behind me into the house, dragging his suitcase like it weighed 1,000 pounds. He headed straight for our bedroom, muscle memory guiding him up the stairs while I stayed in the kitchen, counting down the minutes until he discovered the changes I'd made. 3 minutes. That's how long it took before I heard his footsteps returning, heavier now, almost stumbling. He appeared in the kitchen doorway, his face pale. My clothes aren't in the closet. They're in the guest room, I said, pulling a folder from my laptop bag. We need to talk. Gabriel's eyes fixed on the folder in my hands, the legal-sized manila envelope that held his future. Isabella, what is this? Sit down, I said, gesturing to the kitchen table where we'd shared 5 years of meals, conversations, and lies. He sat slowly, like his bones had turned to glass. I opened the folder and spread the contents across the table with deliberate precision. The divorce papers, crisp and official with their blue backing. The forensic accounting report Catherine's team had prepared, 23 pages detailing every financial transgression. Bank statements with highlighted withdrawals. The insurance policy documentation. The property deed transfer. A comprehensive catalog of betrayal, documented in black and white. Gabriel's face transformed as he processed what lay before him. First came confusion, his eyebrows drawing together as he tried to make sense of the papers. Then shock, his mouth opening slightly as he recognized the insurance documents. Anger flashed next, his jaw clenching as he saw the bank statements. Finally, as the full scope of his exposure became clear, his expression crumbled into something pathetic and pleading. Where did you get these? His voice was barely a whisper. From your filing cabinet. The one you thought I didn't have a key to. I sat across from him, maintaining the same calm I'd shown since Tuesday night. The divorce papers are new, of course. My attorney drew them up this morning. Your attorney? He looked up sharply. You've already seen a lawyer? You moved in with another woman, Gabriel. What did you expect me to do? Wait patiently for you to come back? His hands trembled as he picked up the forensic accounting report. This says I diverted $30,000. $32,467 to be precise. Over 2 years. Insurance premiums for a policy on Cassidy. Property consultation fees that mysteriously coincided with her deed transfer. Various other expenses that had nothing to do with our marriage but everything to do with your plans with her. The house, he said suddenly, looking around our kitchen as if seeing it for the first time. This is our house. No, Gabriel. This is my house. Purchased before our marriage with my inheritance from my grandmother. You never contributed to the mortgage payments. That came from my personal account, not our joint finances. You're a tenant here now, and you have 30 days to find alternative accommodation. The color drained from his face entirely. You can't do this. I can and I am. The joint accounts have been frozen pending division of assets. Though given the forensic accounting, my attorney believes the court will be very interested in your financial misconduct. Marital asset fraud, she called it. Gabriel stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. You planned this. You knew about Cassidy's surgery, about everything. I knew what you chose to show me, I said calmly. Your laptop was open. Your emails were right there. You left your filing cabinet unlocked. You made it remarkably easy to understand exactly what you and Cassidy were planning. The documents, he said, the realization dawning with horrible clarity. The ones Cassidy found in her mailbox. That was you. I tilted my head slightly. I simply ensured everyone involved had all the information needed to make informed decisions. Isn't that what you claim to be doing? Making the mature, informed choice to help someone in need. You destroyed everything, Gabriel said, his voice rising. You turned Cassidy against me. I didn't turn anyone against you. I just made sure Cassidy knew about the life insurance policy you took out on her. The one worth $500,000 with you as the sole beneficiary. Any reasonable person would find that concerning, don't you think? Especially combined with the property transfer. Gabriel's phone buzzed on the table. He grabbed it and I watched his face go even paler as he read. He turned the screen toward me. Cassidy's Facebook post was already gaining traction. Posted just minutes ago. Warning to all women. It began in all caps. Gabriel Harrington is a fraud who tried to con me out of my house and took out life insurance on me without my knowledge. He used his wife's money to pay for it while planning to leave her. Receipts attached. Below were photos of every document from the envelope I'd left in her mailbox. The insurance policy, the property deed, even screenshots of their emails discussing their plan. The comments were already piling up, our mutual friends expressing shock, anger, disbelief. My reputation, Gabriel whispered, scrolling through the growing storm of comments. My career. Everyone will see this. Yes, I agreed. They will. His phone rang. His brother's name appeared on the screen. Then it rang again. His mother. A colleague. The avalanche had begun. You did this, he said, but there was no fight left in his voice, just hollow recognition. You orchestrated all of it. The packing, the driving me there, the documents. You knew exactly what would happen. I knew that Cassidy deserved to know what kind of man was moving into her house. I knew you deserved to face the consequences of your choices. And I knew I deserved better than a husband who'd been planning his exit for 2 years while sleeping beside me every night. Gabriel sank back into the chair, his phone continuing to buzz with incoming calls and messages. The life he'd carefully built, the reputation he'd cultivated, the elaborate plan he'd crafted with Cassidy, all of it was crumbling in real time, documented for public consumption on social media. The guest room has clean sheets, I said, gathering the legal documents back into their folder. Your belongings are in the closet there. You have 30 days, Gabriel. I suggest you start looking for an apartment tomorrow. I stood to leave, but his voice stopped me at the doorway. How long have you known? Known what? That you were leaving? Since Tuesday night. That you were a liar? Maybe I always knew. I just chose to believe in something better. I never meant for it to happen like this, he said to my back. No, I agreed without turning around. You meant for it to happen with me never finding out. With you having both Cassidy's property and my financial support. With you getting everything while I got nothing but an empty house and confusion. This version where you get exposed for who you really are. You're right. You never meant for that to happen. I walked upstairs to my bedroom, mine alone now, and closed the door on Gabriel's muffled phone conversation with what sounded like his brother. The panicked tone of his voice drifted through the floorboards as I changed into comfortable clothes and pulled my hair back. This was my house. My space. My life to reclaim. 2 weeks passed in a blur of legal meetings and redirected mail. The suburban gossip network, more efficient than any news service, kept me informed without my having to ask. Maria heard from her colleague who lived on Rosewood Court that Cassidy had filed a restraining order against Gabriel. The property transfer had been flagged as potentially fraudulent, and she was pursuing legal action. Mrs. Patterson, walking butterscotch past my house daily now, mentioned she'd heard Gabriel had moved into a studio apartment near the highway, the kind of place that advertised affordable weekly rates on faded billboards. My mother arrived on a Saturday morning, 3 weeks after Gabriel's departure, carrying a pot of her famous chicken soup and wearing the determined expression of a woman on a mission. She let herself in with her spare key, found me reading in the living room, and set the soup on the kitchen counter without a word. You look thin, she said, her standard greeting regardless of my actual appearance. I'm eating fine, Mom. She heated the soup while I set the table, our movements synchronized from years of practice. We ate in comfortable silence for several minutes before she spoke again. Your father wasn't my first husband. I nearly dropped my spoon. In 32 years she'd never mentioned this. His name was Richard, she continued, stirring her soup with careful precision. Charming, ambitious, everything a young woman thinks she wants. We were married for 3 years before I discovered he'd been using my trust fund to finance his girlfriend's boutique. He'd convinced me to put his name on everything, said it was what married couples did. Mom, I had no idea. I was 25 and thought I knew everything about love. She looked up at me and I saw my own recent experience reflected in her eyes. The morning I found out, I wanted to burn his clothes on the lawn, scream at him in front of his colleagues, make sure everyone knew what kind of man he was. What did you do? I documented everything. Quietly. Carefully. Then I served him divorce papers at his girlfriend's boutique grand opening, in front of all their investors. A small smile played at her lips. The boutique closed within 6 months. Richard moved to Ohio and became a used car salesman. Last I heard, he was on his 3rd marriage. And Dad? I met your father 2 years later. By then, I knew the difference between charm and character. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. The best revenge is living well while they live with their choices, Isabella. You're already doing that. The validation I hadn't known I needed washed over me. My mother, the woman who'd taught me to fold fitted sheets and never leave the house without lipstick, understood exactly what I'd done and why. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer, Cassidy's sister from Lauren's book club. Cassidy wants you to know something. Can I give her your number? I considered for a moment before responding. She can email me. The message came through that evening, sent from a new email address with no subject line. Isabella. I won't insult you with apologies or excuses. We both know what I did and what I intended to do. But you saved me from something potentially dangerous. The insurance policy, the property transfer. My lawyer says it could have been catastrophic if I'd let him stay. I've posted everything online, not for drama but to warn others. Gabriel Harrington is a predator in a pleasant mask. Thank you for removing that mask. I'm moving to Colorado next month. Fresh start. Cassidy. I read it twice before deleting it. No response was needed. Cassidy and I weren't going to become friends, bonded by Gabriel's betrayal. We were just 2 women who'd learned an expensive lesson about the difference between what men say and what they do. The leaves turned fall colors as my life settled into new rhythms. Gabriel's 30 days came and went with him, collecting his remaining belongings while I was deliberately at work. He left his key on the kitchen counter with no note, just the metal acknowledgement that this chapter was closed. 6 months after that Tuesday evening revelation, I hosted my first dinner party in the house that was now entirely mine. Maria brought her new boyfriend, a pediatrician who laughed at her jokes and looked at her like she hung the moon. Lauren came with her husband and a bottle of wine expensive enough to show she was celebrating my freedom. Even Mrs. Patterson was invited, regaling everyone with neighborhood gossip while pretending she hadn't been my spy network during the dark days. The house felt different now. Lighter. I'd repainted the walls in colors Gabriel had called too bold, hung artwork he deemed too modern, and converted his office into a reading room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. Every corner reflected my choices, my taste, my life. A toast, Maria announced, raising her glass as we gathered in the living room after dinner. To Isabella, who showed us all that sometimes the best response to betrayal isn't revenge, it's revelation. We clinked glasses, the sound crystalline in my peaceful home. Through the window I could see the city lights spreading into the distance, each one representing someone living their own story, facing their own betrayals and triumphs. Somewhere across town, Gabriel was learning that reputation once shattered couldn't be rebuilt with explanations or excuses. His LinkedIn profile had gone dark after too many people shared Cassidy's warning post. The marketing firm where he'd worked had quietly suggested he seek opportunities elsewhere. Cassidy had indeed moved to Colorado, leaving behind a townhouse that no longer held either profit or promise for Gabriel's schemes. I stood in my kitchen after everyone left, washing wine glasses by hand, taking comfort in the simple ritual. The house was quiet but not empty. It was filled with the echoes of genuine laughter, real friendship, and the knowledge that I'd chosen truth over comfortable lies. The manila envelope that had started Gabriel's downfall was long gone, but its impact remained. Not in bitterness or anger, but in the clean, sharp clarity of a life reclaimed. I'd learned that sometimes the most devastating weapon isn't rage or revenge. It's simply ensuring everyone sees the truth. If this story of calculated revenge kept you riveted until the very end, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Isabella slipped that manila envelope into Cassidy's mailbox, knowing exactly what would unfold within 48 hours. What was your favorite moment of Isabella's masterful planning? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more gripping stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.